It's the CalebDMTG Show.
Welcome to section 2 of my set review. Gonna dig into the blue cards here. You just got here, can I start over? Well, you don't, you didn't miss anything anyway, you just missed the white cards. You showed up at the perfect time. You can't decide if Alrund is good. Well, it's a mythic, of course it's good. No, let's read it. Alrund, God of the Cosmos. 3 blue, legendary creature, God. Alrund gets +1/+1 for each card in your hand and each foretold card you own in exile. At the beginning of your end step, choose a card type, then reveal the top 2 cards of your library. Put all cards of the chosen type in your hand, the rest of the bottom of your library in any order. So by turn 5, which is the earliest that you could play this really, what size? How large do we think Alrund's gonna be? Usually cards like this shrink a lot by the time you actually get to play them. Like I'm thinking about Sturmgeist, and it's usually like a 3/3 or something by the time you get to play it. If the cards that you're playing are going into Foretold Exile though, as opposed to just like going straight to the graveyard or staying in play, then it kind of gets to stay large. So what's up next? I think it's going to be like a 5 and a 5/5, which becomes pretty solid. What's the flip? I don't want to think about the front side until we think about the flip side. But we're done. We're done thinking about the front side. Flippity side. Hakka, Whispering Raven. 1 in the blue, legendary creature, bird, flying. When the raven deals combat damage to a player, return it to its owner's hand, then scry 2. So the cool thing about the raven is that it actually plays really well with Alrund, right? You can fire it off on turn 2, have a 2/3 blocker that the opponent doesn't want to attack into. And then when you want to play the Alrund, you can smack the opponent, scry 2, and set up the Alrund side. And since you've scried with the Raven, you've increased the chance. I mean, you've basically set up the Alrund end of turn trigger, which then grows it, because the card goes into your hand. So the two sides play together really nicely. I agree, Ponder Putty. I also like that the flip cards make playing Legends less punishing. You can draw 2 of them and like have it still be in play. Have them both be in play at the same time. If you're going for Alrund, do you want to spend that 2 mana on Foretell and not a bird? Well, it's the same. You actually get more. You get a larger Alrund if you play the bird than if you play a Foretell card for 2 mana. Do you see how that works? So normally when you would play a card from your hand, you would be shrinking the Alrund. If you play a Foretell card, then it's kind of like you just held a card in your hand. The Alrund would stay the same, whether the card was in Foretell, in Foretold Exile, or if it was still in your hand. The bird, you're playing a card, but the bird is Alrund itself. When it bounces back to your hand, when you smack them to return it to your hand, when you're done like having it as a blocker or whatever, and it comes back to your hand. So it's very similar to having played a Foretold card, in that your hand size isn't like now the same, right? It's still neutral in terms of power and toughness. But because you got to scry 2, now the Alrund end of turn trigger is resolving. Now you know what to name.
Oh shit, what up?
So you're getting a card off of the end of turn trigger because of the scry. So a normal card, a normal foretold card that you exiled would be power and toughness neutral with Alrund. But if you set up the bird thing profitably, such that you get to hit and draw a card, then the bird will be +1 card. Hey, Cayman, 218, thanks for the sub, thanks for 17 months. Yeah, exactly, Deliani. Yeah, the two sides work really well together. Good with Brainstorm, sure. Lots of cards are good with Brainstorm. You're not wrong. Yeah, this card's definitely sweet. Definitely sweet, definitely cool. It'll be a fun one to play with in Cube. I don't know if it's good enough for Constructed. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of text here, there's a lot of options here. There's some value built into the card. Those are all good signs for Constructed playability. But I still don't know. It's not, like, obviously powerful to me or anything. You think it's too slow for Standard? I mean, if your opponent's tapped out, then there's a good chance that the ability gets to draw you some cards. And if you're getting value, you care if it dies less. And 2 mana for a 2/3 flyer is a good rate. The issue is if you, like, have to keep on replaying your 2/3 flyer over and over again, right? Like, you don't want to have to spend 2 mana for your 2/3 every single turn. It's not a very good attacking stat, right? But it is something to do with your 5-drop if you have nothing else to do with your turn. I really like the color of the tattoo. I was actually reading about Nordic tattoos from that Viking lady, the Viking Answer Lady page that I shared. There's this, like, old Flash page from the 90s and early 2000s with just, like, tons of sweet articles and references and stuff on Nordic scholarship and customs. And I read the section on tattoos. And apparently, like, dark blue was very common. We expect. We don't have any of their skin. You know, we don't have archaeological remains of their skin. You know, unless there's, like, a Norse warrior frozen in ice somewhere that we find eventually. So that's the only way we'd really know what their tattoos looked like. But there's some old texts of people encountering Norsemen and writing down what they saw, what they experienced. And one of the few examples we have is them talking about trees and runes from the someone's wrist all the way up their arm like that. Like, basically what you see here, and in a dark blue color, because that's they hypothesize that they got the ink from, like, burning tree bark, and that's what the ink was made out of. And what gave them that dark blue. This is a little bit more mystical than dark blue, but it is, like, within the same. It's in like the correct color scheme and everything. Pretty neat. I wonder if the art director chose the color or if the artist did. I know artists put a ton of research into their work a lot of the time. You're gonna be spending so much time on a piece, like, you want it to be as best as possible, as good as possible. Anyway, Alrund's Epiphany, 5 blue sorcery. Create 2 1/1 blue bird creature tokens with flying. Take an extra turn after this one. Exile Alrund's Epiphany. And then it has Foretell for 4 blue. I mean, I like to take extra turn effects. They're satisfying, especially if you have some way of taking advantage. I like that this one gives you a few birds. It is an expensive card. It is a pricey card. But if you're ramping to that mana anyway, you know, then at a certain point it's just free, right? Compared to the end of the turn card. Yeah, the end of the turn card is real similar. Similarly priced, right? That one costs 6 mana, right? It doesn't give you 2 birds though. It doesn't give you 2 birds, and it doesn't have the foretell mechanic. There are some cards that interact with the foretell mechanic, make it slightly cheaper, that sort of thing. Could be a consideration. Yeah, Time Squawk. Love it. Anyway. Yeah, certainly not going to dominate standard or anything like that. I play the shit out of this in Cube, though. Annul. Oldie but a goodie. 1 blue, counter target artifact or enchantment spell. There's a solid amount of like equipment and auras and such in this set. Annul seems like a reasonable main deck card. The issue with Annul, as opposed to an actual factual disenchant, is that you need to have the mana up the turn that they want to play their equipment or their pacifism or whatever. And that can be a hard thing to predict sometimes. So it can like punish you for tapping out. Whereas an actual removal spell, you know, it's good off the top of your library too. You're like, oh, an answer to that thing that's beating me. Whereas Annul, the timing has to be real precise. It's only 1 mana, but in general I would rather have like an actual removal spell. So that matters if you're like blue-green and you're not sure whether to play Annul or Invoke, for example. Ascendant Spirit is real interesting. 1 mana for a 1/1 snow creature spirit. 2 snow, it becomes a spirit warrior with base power and toughness 2/3. 3 snow, if it's a warrior, put a flying counter on it, and becomes a spirit warrior angel with base power and toughness 4/4. And then for 4 snow, if it's an angel, you put 2 1/1 counters on it, and it gains whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player. Draw a card. So it functions like a leveler, kind of. Or Figure of Destiny more. Yeah, I think this card's good. It's harder to fit the second activation in than Figure. The first activation is less free because it costs 2 mana instead of 1. That's a big difference. You're not like activating it on turn 2 and playing another 1-drop. But the turn 3, the 3 activation, getting flying is really big. That's a pretty steep upgrade from Figure. And then the last activation costing 4 instead of costing, I think 6. I think Figure costs 6, right? 4 is a lot more doable. And you can stack the last ability. Oh mama. Oh baby. So anytime I see like a constructed playable spirit, I start thinking about it in Modern, because I've played a lot of Modern spirits. This one obviously doesn't work in Bant spirits, because there's no way you can play enough snow mana. Bant spirits needs its dual lands, right? And I don't think it works in blue-white spirits either. I think you end up with, I think if you're playing blue-white spirits, I think you want some utility lands in your mana base, right? I think you want your Mutavaults. And with this card, you kind of want all of your lands to be tapping for snow. Which makes me question how good it's going to be in Limited. Because you have to draft your snow lands, right? Similar to that Masters set. 1 snow land per pack. Yeah, but I mean, if you drafted the snow set, if you drafted the Masters set that had the 1 snow per pack thing, it worked out really well. People who like really wanted snow effects could do it, but you could generally only have like 2 dedicated snow decks per draft. it felt like. And that format had Astrolabe, so you could play a lot of off-color snow basics and be fine. This format does not have Astrolabe. It does have snow dual lands, but I'm not sure that helps enough. I think it's going to be very difficult to consistently have the 4 snow lands to activate Spirit and Limited if you're not the dedicated snow deck. Like, if you're just drafting Ascendant Spirit in a 2-color aggro deck, then it's hard to also, like, jam a bunch of off-color snow basics in there without damaging your mana base. The card might be powerful enough that it's worth it. And clearly very good. But think about how many snow lands you would need in your deck to consistently activate this on turn 4. And it's just not happening most of the time, right? Like, even if you end up with 5 snow basics, you're still not even activating on 2 most of the time. Mana Snow Darks? Right, the format I'm describing, right, the Masters set that had snow in it. Or maybe that was Modern Horizons. I don't remember. It also had that. It also had Snow Dorks and stuff. The 3 snow activation already makes it a bomb and limited. Yeah. I mean, the 3 is also tricky. It's also, like, not free. But you're right. You don't have to necessarily get to 4 for it to be a good card. Obviously, I'm going to take Ascendant Spirit highly, but when I do, I'm also going to be drafting the lands pretty highly. It was Modern Horizons, gotcha. Yeah, I drafted a lot of that format. The slower the format is, the easier it's going to be for you to get to 4 too. You thought Modern Horizons was the worst set ever. I really liked Modern Horizons as a limited format. I drafted the shit out of it. Anyway. This card's sweet. I like it. Obviously, constructed playable. I don't think it's going to show up in actual factual Modern as much as I would like it to. Like, I played a lot of Figure of Destiny in my day. Maybe good enough for Historic and Pioneer. We'll see. Good enough for Standard. I mean, if you're doing Snowlands in Standard, that's really the trick, right? That's the real trick. If you can activate this consistently, obviously it's good enough. Obviously it's good enough for Constructed, of whatever format. But it's just tricky. Tricky bit of business there. Auger Ravens. Oh, it's my Phantom Monster? Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Could pop up on turn 3. Turn 3, 3/3 flyer is good. That's hella good. Yeah, this card's great. It's pretty rare that there's a common flyer that gets me excited, that rustles my jimmies these days. But I would pick this one pretty highly, I think. Going into the format. I might change my mind after playing with the format some, but no, I like this one. Not drafting it over, you know, bombs and removal, but taking over most other stuff. You need to take off turn 2? Yeah. So if you have something on turn 2, then you curve out like you would on turn 2, right? If you're doing the 2/3 thing, then this card still fits your curve. You just play it on turn 4, and it's still awesome. But if you don't have a turn 2 play, and all of a sudden you have a 3/3 flyer on turn 2, the fact that your turn 3 play is a 3/3 flyer makes up for the fact that you don't have a turn 2 play. So it's just good. The card is just good. Anyway. Avalanche Caller. 1 in a white, or 1 in a blue, sorry. We're in the blue section now. 1 in a blue, 1/3 snow creature, human wizard. 2 mana, target snow land you control becomes a 4/4 elemental creature with hexproof and haste. Till end of turn, it's still a land. Interesting. Interesting set of abilities. Hey, Jack Lamont, thanks for the sub there. The 21 months, the long streak. The snowboarder. I like the snowboarder. It's cool. Breaks up the visual design of the set a bit. Sagas are really good for that, too. I love sagas because they're like an excuse to mix it. Well, we don't have to talk about sagas too much. We're not talking about it right now. But they do let you break up the visual style of the set. Anyway. Yeah, Avalanche Caller is definitely powerful. 2 mana, target snow land you control becomes a 4/4. So the land that you're targeting, assuming that you want to attack with it, that's kind of like a 3 mana effect. 3 mana for 4 damage is pretty good. it's a fairly solid rate. Like, if all you're doing is playing this card and then activating it on turn 3, you're still attacking for 5 on turn 3, and you can't really get blown out by a removal spell because the land gets hexproof. Obviously, you need to have snowlands in your deck. You don't need as many as you would for Ascendant Spirit. You don't need, like, 4 snowlands in play at the same time for this card to be good. You just need 1 or 2, right? You still probably want to have more than 1 or 2 snowlands in your deck, but you can get away with a much lower count. You can play like 4 or 5 snowlands and still activate this pretty consistently. Also, 2 mana for a 1/3 is a fine limited body. It's totally reasonable, just to gum things up and slow down the opponent. The ability is almost good enough for constructed. It might be pushed enough for constructed. For 5 mana, you can attack with a 4/4 haste. Like just playing it from your hand and activating. You think it's fringe constructed? I mean, if you're building around snow and you care about snow permanence, then you might just value Avalanche Caller as a snow card that does snow things. But the ability definitely seems powerful enough. You can come down and like eat an opponent's planeswalker after they played a sweeper. It's like weirdly pressure-y for a 2 mana 1/3. Turn your Nissalance into 7/7s? Oh my. Oh my. Why would you want a card that does nothing? Does this do nothing? This kind of looks like it murders people. This is what it looks like to me. Control sideboard option? Maybe. Like, you would bring it in a control mirror and just try and, like, dead them while they dirtle. Oh, I got you, Abra. Yeah, I was confused. Yeah, we'll see. It kind of excites me, though. I do not think Marit Lodge's Slumber will see more play, no. Unless you're talking about for EDH. Feels like a rare. Yeah, almost feels pushed enough to be a rare. But I understand why it's an uncommon. Like, I don't think it's, like, destroying limited, having this card printed as an uncommon. Really cool card. Behold the multiverse. 3 and a blue instant. Scry 2 and then draw 2 cards. Then you can foretell. This is one of the first cards I saw in the set. And I remember, this was like the first time that I read foretell or anything. And I said that this card was just like straight up standard playable, I think, was my instant take. So now that I'm reading it for the second time, do I still feel that? I do. I do still feel that. Especially knowing that there's like a counter spell and a sweeper that all have foretell in them too. So playing this out on turn 2 lets you play a mind game where the opponent doesn't know what they should be playing around, when all you want to do is draw cards. Scry 2 and draw 2 is also like way different than just flat out inspiration, right? Than just like straight up just draw 2 cards. Scry 2 and draw 2 is so much better. If you get to bin 2 lands you don't want, it's very similar to a draw 4. Scry 2, draw 2 is close to a draw 3. Yeah, exactly, Malcolm. And 4 mana for a draw 3 would obviously be great. And then the fact that you can split up the casting costs over several turns. Yeah, card's just good. Good in combo, good in control, etc. Next thing. And obviously, if I'm saying it's good enough for constructed, that probably implies it's good enough for limited. Berg Strider, 4 and a blue, snow creature, giant wizard. When Berg Strider enters the battlefield, tap target artifact or creature an opponent controls. If snow was spent to cast the spell, that permanent doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. Very interesting. So you're probably not playing this in standard and in constructed, right? 5 mana for a 4/4 is not a good enough rate. Even if you care about snow permanents, even if you care about giant wizards, even if you're like desperate for the creature type, it's just not costed. It's just not costed to dominate constructed. It's here to be a limited role player, and it's good. It's good at that. It's a good limited card. If you're snow, you're drafting this pretty highly. If you're not snow, the card is fine, but it's no longer exciting. Next thing, bind the monster. Blue, enchantment aura, enchant creature. When bind the monster enters the battlefield, tap enchanted creature. Deals damage to you to its power. Enchanted creature doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. I think this is one of the worst of these removal spells that we've seen. The fact that you're like taking the damage when you play it is pretty bad. If you play it on a cheap early creature, then you're taking less damage, but taking any damage when you deal with your opponent's shitter isn't really ideal. And then if you have to answer some giant thing with it, if you're taking care of the opponent's best thing, you're also taking a smack to the face. You think it's a good fatal push? Just like killing something early on? Yeah, it's sort of like ulcerate, right? And if you're killing some small piddly creature. Dismember? Well, you can't really compare it to Dismember because it is, sorcery. That's a pretty big difference. And Dismember could see play in everything. Dismember was also in a format that was where like killing a creature was so much better than having 4 life, because the creature would give you so much value. Like people were playing Splinter Twin in the Dismember format, right? And like Stoneforge Mystic and shit. So I think if you compare this card to Dismember, it comes up wanting in that comparison by a lot too. Yeah, in terms of blue removal spells for limited, this doesn't excite me. You almost have to care about auras. Obviously, it's still removal. You're still gonna like play removal and stuff. It's not quite as bad as one of those enchantments that can only enchant tapped creatures. Those do something similar, where like you have to let the opponent smack you first before you play it as your removal spell. This isn't as bad as that because you can still use it aggressively. You can like bind the monster to tap down a blocker to get in. But it's kind of similar, where you're like taking the damage to get rid of the creature. You'd play one in every blue deck. Yeah, I think it depends. I think if I have access to better removal spells... Like, you're not getting very many removal options in blue. But depending on what you pair your blue with... Like, in blue-green, this card is amazing, because blue-green doesn't have access to much removal, and so, like, any removal spell is like, yes! Like, the light comes shining down, and you're like, yes! Just really excited that you can kill something or answer something. But, especially this cheaply. But if you're, like, blue-black control, and you have, like, all these awesome black removal spells, or you're playing, like, yeah, then it becomes a little bit less exciting. I'm mostly talking about for pick order, right? Like, there's some removal spells that I'll take over, like evasive threats and stuff. But you don't want to stuff your deck with Bind the Monster. I think you're probably right that most blue decks don't mind playing one of these. I think that's probably accurate. But I could also see it not making the cut, and I could also see it, like, not being good in multiples. Sometimes Ulcerate's a bad card. I think I like the Ulcerate comparison. Sometimes Ulcerate's not amazing. It's usually good. It's usually something that you want. But I want to emphasize the downside, because it is unusual to have on a blue card. You're taking the 3/3 bird over this? Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, the 3/3 bird. I'm probably taking Behold the Multiverse over it too, depending on how fast the format is. If the format's faster than I expect it to be, then Bind the Monster starts to become better. But from what I've seen, I think I'd rather draw some cards. It's a call out to the story of the Binding of Fenrir. Oh, that's super cool. Sarulf's snarl of rage shook the world tree. Yeah, the flavor is awesome. The art's awesome. I'm not trying to shit on the card. Brian Barrow, Intruder. 1 blue, creature, human, rogue, flash. When Intruder enters the battlefield, target creature and opponent control gets -2/-0 until end of turn. Wow, they keep on printing more rogues. No, this one's not good. This one's not especially playable. Yeah. In Limited, I feel like people overvalue this sort of effect in Limited. If you can somehow win combat with it, then yeah, having a 1/2 is technically value. But it's hard for a 1/2 to change the tide of course of a Limited game. It's hard for this body to matter. This is a format with equipment, so like maybe a 1/2 body is a little bit better than some other formats that don't have equipment, but overall this isn't the sort of card that I like putting in my decks. They need to have flying to excite you? Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, the 2 mana 1/3 that did something kind of similar recently was a lot better. Kasmina, God of the Voyage. 2 and a blue, legendary creature, God. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may exile Kasmina. If you do, it gains whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control. If Kasmina is exiled, you may put a Voyage counter on it. If you don't, return Kasmina to the battlefield with X11 counters on it and draw X cards, where X is the number of Voyage counters on it. Yeah, so that's a mouthful, huh? There's a lot going on there. So the issue with this card is that it triggers on the beginning of your upkeep, right? So you spend 3 mana and you play your 2/4. You can't just like have it start in exile. I think if this card could start in exile, you just like paid 3 mana and there was an exile. you could like play your land and start gaining value that turn, similar to Tireless Tracker. Like a Tireless Tracker that would suspend, sort of. But I think that card would be very, very good. Having to wait a turn, you pay your 3 mana 2/4. It's as though your Tireless Tracker... So sometimes, every once in a while, you play Tireless Tracker and you don't have your land drop lined up, and you don't have anything else to play on turn 3, so you just like have to play it, and you're like, well, I hope they don't kill this, and I hope I draw a land, so I can get value out of my tracker and have it do its thing where it gets to win the game. This card is kind of like you're always playing it that way, where you just hope you get to untap with it, so that you can do stuff and get value. And then while you're getting value, you're also not murdering the opponent's face. Which Tireless Tracker does. Tireless Tracker is like killing the opponent while drawing you cards, which is pretty filthy. Pretty messed up if you think about it. Very Uro-like, huh? Of Tireless Tracker. Anyway. Flip side, 1 in a blue legendary artifact vehicle. Whenever a vehicle you control deals combat damage to a player, that player exiles that many cards from the top of their library. You may play lands from among those cards, as long as they remain exiled. Crew 1. Crew 1's pretty cheap. The art on this is really cool too. Two mana for a 3/3 vehicle is like fairly aggressive. Obviously, it doesn't have flying. It's no Ludoscooter. But if you connect, you get some value. I think we know that Ludoscooter was like a little too good too. It's certainly better than the 2 mana 2/3 vehicle that we had recently as a blue rare. I'm trying to think of it, like what kind of deck I would want this in. It would have to be like fairly aggressive blue, but the flip side is really defensive. Yeah, I'm having a hard time figuring out which side is better, and so like how you would want to build your deck, because this side is defensive. And this side is aggressive. Mid-range blue? Yeah. I guess. It's a modal card, so it's very flexible. Sure. But flexibility isn't very good if the modes aren't good, right? If you can't think like when you would want the card, then it doesn't matter if there's a bunch of those options. If all of the options are like, well, I would never want this. And that's kind of my issue with the card. Like, this half doesn't seem that bad. If there was if the other half like complemented it nicely. Obviously the lands, you know, getting land drops plays well. But if you're smacking your opponent for 3, then usually you're not trying to like suspend your other cards. You're not trying to like exile them so you can potentially like gain life or draw cards or whatever. Usually you want your other cards to help you just like murder them. Oops. So that's kind of my issue with this card. I don't think it's going to see constructed play. You don't understand the front of this card? Well, okay, so I can explain it again. You play it as 3 mana 2/4. It is kind of counterintuitive. And then at the beginning of your upkeep, so you have to wait a turn before it does anything, before it's not just a 2/4. At the beginning of your upkeep, you can exile it. If you do, it gains whatever land enters the battlefield under your control. You can put a counter on it. If you don't put a counter on it, you can return it to the battlefield with X11 counters on it, and you draw X cards. So the first turn you play it, you're not getting a counter on it. And then the turn after that first turn. So like the earliest you're doing this is turn 4. Then you play a land and you can put a counter on it. And then turn 5 you can play a land and put a counter on it. And then turn 6 you can play a land and then maybe you choose to bring it back into play and draw 2 cards. Somehow this is seeming even wonkier. Y'all remember those suspend cards that did a suspend thing? Like every turn they were suspended, those rares. One of them drew a card. It was like a 4-mana star, and you suspend for 3 and a blue, and then X, and then every turn. Aeon Chronicler, yeah. This card seems about as useful to me as Aeon Chronicler, which is to say not very useful. Oh, you want to play this with fetch lands? Yeah, you want to play this in Modern? Well, that's an interesting idea. Play this in your deck with a bunch of sweepers. So you run it out on turn 3 to block, and then you play your land to exile it and play a sweeper. That's a cute idea. And then it comes back like, who cares? Whenever you need to draw some cards or gain life, or just have the 2/4 back. Aeon was good at the time. Aeon was sort of good at the time. You would dump a bunch of mana into it and like have a like the slowest Krasis of all time. But I think this card's wonkier than Aeon Chronicler, because you have to untap with it, right? It was good in block. Oh, great. Yeah, let's talk about old dead block formats. If it has 3 voyage counters, you can flicker it. What? I don't think that's true. When you exile it again, it loses the counters. I think you need to bring it back into play with the land counter, right? What's the flip side? We talked about the flip side. It's a 2-mana 3/3 vehicle that gives you land drops if your vehicles hit the opponent. Yeah. Alright, Cosmos Charger. 3 and a blue. Creature Horse Spirit. Love it already. I'm already sold. I don't need to know what the rest of this card does. Yeah. I need to remember to edit that fart out of the YouTube VOD. Me bending over to pick up a fallen fucking cobbled here. Cosmos Charger, 3 and a blue. Horse Spirit, getting back on track here. Flash Flying, foretelling cards from your hand, costs 1 less. It can be done on any player's turn. Foretell, 2 and a blue. I think this card's good. I think Foretell is good, and I think that makes this card good. You can have this up on as early as turn 3. This helps you play like a draw-go game with your Foretell cards. Red 7 is shocked that I don't fart on stream more often. I mean, I do, but usually I have the music playing louder. It's harder to control involuntary farts, right? When you don't know what's coming. I also had a lot of beans today. I had some Taco Johns for lunch. Anyway, but enough about my gas. Enough. We can talk more about this Cosmos charger, right? Let's. You clipped it? Why would you do that? Why would you do that to me? You think this is gonna be a cornerstone in Fertel decks? Maybe. I mean, the cost reduction paired with like playing really well with a flash game and having a reasonable body, right? Like it's not an embarrassing body. Yeah, I think this card's gonna see play. Depending on how much standard I play, I'm probably gonna play this. This would be in like some of my earlier versions of Fertel decks. Just to make sure it's good enough, you know? My first rough draft probably has this card. Yeah, I also doubt that Fertel makes it into modern. But it certainly looks good enough for standard. It has 6 legs like Odin's horse. Oh, good eye. Yeah, I didn't know if those were extra legs or if it was just like running that fast that you could see the extra legs, but that makes sense. That makes sense that it's a 6-legged horse. That's fitting. Cyclone Summoner, 5 blue creature giant wizard. When Summoner enters the battlefield, you cast it from your hand, return all permanents to the owner's hands except for giants, wizards, and lands. That was a sweet one. This one's gonna get me in Momir Vig. Card's great. Seven mana is a lot. I mean, Cyclonic Rift is 7 mana. You want to think about it that way. Oh, this isn't Cyclonic Rift though, is it? This is return all permanents. No, it says lands. It says lands there too. Yeah, it's like Cyclonic Rift. Assuming that you're building around it, right? Assuming that you're playing with giants and or wizards. Then you're rifting the opponent and getting a 7/7 body. Yeah, not upheaval. This hits yourself. Well, like I said, you would probably play this either in a deck that does not have very many permanents, or you would play this in a deck that's playing with giants and wizards and such. So you're just nuking the opponent's board. You think Jeskai Giants will be good? There's enough Jeskai Giants that are interesting that I'd want to try it out. I'm not gonna like cold call Giants being good, but they're definitely interesting. They're definitely interesting enough to try. They might be solid. Another potential finisher for control decks, yeah. Yeah, I mean, this doesn't have a sweeper attached, that's true. Depart the Realm. 1 in a blue instant. Return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Fertel blue. During your turn, you may pay 2 and exile this card from your hand face down. Cast it on a later turn for its Fertel cost. What I like about this card, I mean, obviously, bounce spells are fine, like, totally reasonable. And limited. Sometimes constructed, but more so for limited. Sometimes you can squeeze one into a constructed deck for random situations. The thing I like about this one is that it's any non-land permanent, right? It's not just the opponent's, so you can save your own things. Land's pretty versatile. You might be able to play it for a single mana at some point. Some sick tempo, yeah, maybe. D-Stroke is a reprint. We don't really need to talk about it a whole ton. D-Stroke does work against Fertel. Fertel doesn't change the casting cost. So if your opponent foretells Behold the Multiverse, for example. You can still stroke it. Draugr Thought Thief. Tune Blue. Creature Zombie Rogue. Draugr Thought Thief enters the battlefield. Look at the top card of target player's library. Let me put that in the graveyard. Oh, this is nice. So you can like scry or Fate Seal. Can you get a teal DW on the Blue God? Oh, I don't think it's good enough. That's all you get. If you want more than that, we spent a while on it. Yeah, if you're targeting yourself, Surveil's a little bit better than Scry. If you're targeting the opponent, it's a little bit worse than Fate Seal. Because of graveyard synergies. Usually you're going to want to use it on yourself, though. The issue with using it on the opponent, not that you never should use it on the opponent, but the issue with using it on the opponent is you don't always know what they need. Right? Whereas if you target yourself, you're like, oh, that land I need, or oh, that land I don't need, bin. Or maybe you play this with the graveyard synergy cards, and you actually like want to hit some things to put in the graveyard, and then you get value, like actual value. Yeah, there's one snow land per pack, Snow Schwartz. So you can draft around snow. Frost Auger. 1 blue, snow creature, human wizard, uncommon. 1/2, snowman and tap. Look at the top card of your library. If it's a snow card, you may reveal it and put it in your hand. Oh, this card's great. I mean, in the right deck, this card is great. It's like a scrying sheets, but then it also reveals snow permanents, whereas sheets only hit lands. How much of your deck do you need to have to be snow before this card is good? Hey, Ravioli, thanks for the sub, thanks for the 38 months. So you're building a dedicated snow deck. If you're building a snow deck that has enough snow in it to activate this consistently, you probably have at least 6 snowlands in your deck. Maybe more like 8 or 9 if you're lucky, right? If snow's open. And then maybe you have like 7-ish permanents. Maybe that's not enough. Maybe you need to be like really snow. So you're drawing a card. How often do you need to be drawing a card? Like 1 in 3. I think if you're drawing a card every other activation, this card's actively good. But I think if it's like 1 in 4, then it's bad. Hey Shmoo, thanks for the sub, thanks for 18 months. You think you need to be pretty heavy snow-based? Yeah.
Oh, shit, what up?
Some of the nuttier Modern Horizons snow decks I had, this card would be hitting like well over half the time. Hey Blue Devil Boxer, thanks for the sub, thanks for the 5 months there. Only 1 mana is so strong. Sort of. If you have Scry in your deck to line up activations, it gets better. Yeah, I can see that. If you're like pairing it with card filtering too. Right, Kaboom. I think I would rather have Astrolabe than the Snow Duels, though. Right, Kaboom? It's probably easier to draft a dedicated Snow deck with a bunch of Astrolabes at common than with Snow Duels in the format. So I think that you can use the lessons from Modern Horizons, from drafting Snow in Modern Horizons, and apply them to this format fairly well. Green Warden always overperformed for you? Sure. Green Warden doesn't cost mana, though. You need to spend a mana to activate this every time. No, we're just talking about limited for now, Kaboom. For constructed, you have a lot more choice, right? In terms of like how snow your deck is. In constructed, like if your whole deck is snow shit, so you're just like getting a card every single time. Or mostly snow stuff, right? Then it starts to become kind of insane. Yeah, Frost Auger definitely seems like the sort of thing that you want to pick up when snow is open, and you're getting like gobs of snow permanents, and then it's going to be really good in those decks. But it's not going to do much on its lonesome. Alright, Frostpeak Yeti, 3 in blue. Snow creature Yeti, 1 in the snow, can't be blocked this turn. Oh, this card's good. You need to have snow to activate it, but... I mean, Hill Giants generally get kind of underrated. Like, 4 mana for a 3/3 is totally fine. Totally solid in and of itself. And then, if it has that evasive ability, pretty decent. Obviously, it's not as good as a card that just, like, comes with the evasion, like Augury Raven. But if you're trying to jam as many snow cards into a deck as possible, real nice to have a 4-drop. Frostfire Arcanist, 4 and a blue for a 2/5. Creature Giant Wizard. The spell costs 1 less to cast if you control a giant or a wizard. Under its battlefield, search your library for an instant or sorcery card with the same name as a card in your graveyard, reveal it and put it in your hand, then shuffle your library. This card's a little wonky for my taste. Feels like more of a wizard spell than a giant spell. It costs 1 less to cast if you have a giant or a wizard, so then your 5 mana 2/5 is a 4 mana 2/5. And then it gets an instant or sorcery, but only if you have like the same one in your graveyard. And it seems like a lot of hoops. Seems like a lot of hoops to jump through. I don't think I like it. I don't think I like it for any format. Yeah, the value seems a little situational to me. Giant's Amulet. I mean, you can play it if you want to have a 4 or 5 mana 2/5. Giant's Amulet, blue, artifact equipment. When it enters the battlefield, you may pay 3 and a blue. If you do, create a 4/4 blue giant wizard creature token. Then attach Giant's Amulet to it. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 and this creature has hexproof, as long as it's untapped. So it's a pretty good equipment for vigilant creatures. Blue-white has a lot. It feels like blue-white has a lot of vigilant flyers in this set. Yeah, the situational hexproof is interesting. For 5 mana for a 4/5 that has hexproof when it's untapped is pretty decent. Because you can just sit there. You don't have to attack with the creature. You can just sit there and have a 4/5 hexproof. Hold off your opponent's team while they can't attack. Do you ever play this as an equipment? You'd have to have a really good reason. Like I was just talking about vigilant flyers. If you wanted to make sure that they couldn't kill your vigilant flyer, or if it just like gave you a better attack the turn you played it with the +1 toughness, then those could be reasons to play it as an equipment. You're almost always going to be playing this for the 4/4 value, or for the 4/5 with situational hexproof. Yeah, that's solid. Yeah, that's a totally reasonable rate. I would like it a little bit more if the equipment was less situational. Right, if the creature dies, the equipment was a little bit better afterwards, but it's still good. You think unequipping this and equipping to something better is going to be... You think moving this to something better is going to be really common? I don't know how often you're gonna have something better than a 4/4. Like, you're not gonna have something better than a 4/4 on turn 5, right? Like, we're not talking about this card for constructed. At least I'm not. 4/4 is getting there, right? 4/4 is getting towards the top of your curve a lot of the time. With the exception being, you know, if you have some giant vigilant flyer. Anyway, Glimpse the Cosmos. One in the blue sorcery. Look at the top 3 cards of your library, put one of them in your hand, the rest on the bottom of your library, in any order. As long as you control a giant, you may cast Glimpse from your graveyard. From your graveyard? By paying blue rather than paying its cost. If you cast Glimpse this way, and it would be put in your graveyard, exile it instead. Yeah, that card's awesome. A little bit of graveyard value, as long as you're playing with giants. And it's not dead, right? If you're not playing with giants, it's not a dead card. This card is a fantastic sealed card, because it's going to be very easy for your like 3 colors sealed nonsense pile to want the filtering so that you hit your colors, so you find like your more powerful cards, and so that your mana works out. You're gonna have time to play your filtering and sealed, whereas you might not have the time in draft. Draft is usually faster. And then also, it's gonna be easy to just like have a couple of giants in your deck. You don't have to draft this like dedicated giant tribal to make sure that Glimpse the Cosmos gets value. Sealed, the games last long enough that if you just have a few giants, it's a really good chance that you get to flash this back at some point. That said, earlier we were talking about how giant is like borderline good enough as a tribe to be worth considering for standard. And obviously, if that's the case, then this is worth trying out. The more tempo-oriented, the more pressury you want to be, then the wonkier this card gets. And obviously, as a sorcery, it's not very good in like a draw ghost strat, but if you're just like going like giant, then it's not like you're holding up counters anyway. Real interesting card. Really sick art, too. Graven Lore, 3 blue, snow instant, scry X, where X is the amount of snow spent to cast the spell, then draw 3 cards. So you can play this card with no snowlands whatsoever in your limited deck, and just have a 5-mana draw 3, and that's totally fine. Or you can play this in Constructed, and have all of your lands be snowlands on the other end of the old spectrum, and scry 5 before drawing 3, which is borderline good enough, huh? That's borderline good enough for Constructed. Scry 5, draw 3. You do have to be in snow already. Five or more? I mean, are you saying if there's like a Thalia effect in play? I think 5's the cap friend. Wait, never mind. Yeah. Jace's ingenuity's seen Constructed play. Yeah. I mean, having all your lands be snow lands is not free. You know, it's not 100% free. You're playing worse fixing if you're a multicolored deck. But I agree. The card is interesting for Constructed, for sure. You're saying Standard is really strong right now? Yeah. Still, if there's a draw go deck, if and there is, it's one of those cards where if it sees Standard play, it's going to be because there's the shell for it, right? It's not going to show up in multiple different archetypes. It's like, this can be played in exactly one type of deck. If that type of deck is playable, then this card will be good. Iceblind Pillar, 2 and a blue, snow artifact, 1 snow, tap target artifact or creature. This isn't bad. Not a bad little tapper. I don't hate it. Not good enough for Constructed, I don't think. I mean, tappers usually aren't these days. though they were back in the day. This one can't even port a land. You can't even icy them. Good payoff for being snow unlimited. A tapper? Yeah, I guess. I mean, if you think about like tap creatures that require a mana activation, this isn't just any old mana either, right? It's a snow activation. So if you have other snow activated abilities, and then in limited you only have so many snow lands. Anyway, that all makes me like a little bit less excited. That said, because you need snow to activate it, the deck that does want this will get it every time. Other people aren't going to be snagging this to just like throw in their deck. Icebreaker Kraken, 10 blue, snow creature Kraken. What's crack-a-lackin'? The spell costs 1 less to cast for each snow land you control. So on turn 6, if you had all snow lands in play, you could spend 6 mana and play this. When enters the battlefield, artifacts and creatures target opponent controls don't untap during the next untap step. And then you can return 3 snow lands you control to their owner's hand, and return Icebreaker Kraken to its owner's hand. Ooh. This card's sweet. And not just the art, but the art is awesome. If it tapped them, maybe? I mean, if it tapped them, this card would be a little too good. Like, they... that would be like a Frost Titan for their entire board. I think this card's good. Is this limited unplayable? On what turn do we get 6 snow lands? Well, you don't need 6 snow lands. Remember that it's like a 12 mana card, and then it costs 1 less for each snow land you control. So if you say that a third of your mana base is snow lands and limited, so you're playing an 18 land deck, and 6 of those lands are snow land, then by the time you have 9 mana in play, you should have 3 snow lands. Instead of costing 12, this will cost 9. So then it becomes like, is the format slow enough that a 9 mana 8/8 that keeps all of your opponent's lands tapped? It's an unkillable 9 mana 8/8, right? Like if they have a removal spell, you get to bounce some lands and rebuy it to play it later. And then if you have more of your mana base, like that was if you have 6 snow lands in your deck, right? But if you get the nut snow deck, and you have more like 8 or 10, or however many, then you're playing it before turn 9 on average. That starts to get kind of nutty. Or 9 lands, you know, not turn 9 necessarily. But no, I wouldn't call this unplayable and limited. I'm gonna play the shit out of this card. If I get the chance, obviously. Still gotta open it. And have Snow be open. It's unlikely to replay it right away if you bounce it. Yeah, but, I mean, you don't need to. It doesn't affect lands. Yeah, just artifacts and creatures. Did I say lands? My apologies. Thanks for the correction. You'd prefer reanimating Drakuzith? Yeah. So? What does that have to do with anything? You think this card is bad and limited because of the investment you need to make it worthwhile? Well, this isn't the only snow payoff in limited. This isn't going to be the only snow card in your deck. I think you're wrong. I think this is a good limited card. Assuming that you have the snow lands. But if you're drafting snow, you're drafting the snow lands very highly. And you're getting a lot of them. If you want to think about it for constructed, where like literally every one of your lands is a snow land, 6 mana for an 8/8 is not a terrible rate. The ability is very anti-creature, and then the bounce 3 lands ability is more anti-control, anti-removal. Yeah, I don't know. It's like vaguely Titan-esque. Probably not quite as good as a Titan, but that's what it reminds me of. The cool thing about this is once you get past 6 snowlands, it starts becoming, you know, even cheaper and cheaper the later the game goes. What about that gate 8/8?
Oh shit, what up?
This card's obviously more powerful than that, but it's got similar things going on. The gate 8/8. That one also had recursion, where like you'd play a gate and put it on top of your library. Yeah, Gate Colossus. Late in the game, you're saying the board is either empty or it's stalled, so you feel like the ability won't do much. Maybe. Maybe. If your opponent's activating abilities, like say this Icebound Pillar that's right next to it, then you kind of dick that up for a turn. If they're hitting you with an evasive creature, like some flyer, then you fog that for a turn while you set up to like smack them with your 8/8. Also, note that the ability does play well with the recur ability, right? So if you have enough lands to give this pseudo-vigilance or whatever, I don't know, you can like attack, then they attack you back, and then there's the danger of you just like attacking them for the second time and then bouncing it and replaying it. If and you have enough. You can replay one of the snowlands immediately. So it's not that crazy. Not that crazy of an idea once you get to the super late game. I could see I could see all the abilities mattering. If Icebreaker was snow permanents, would it be modern playable? Like it cost 1 less for each snow permanent? Maybe. Astrolabe's not legal in modern, right? Yeah, probably not. Snow permanents, and it becomes like, it goes from being like a solid limited bomb, I think, to being like a busted limited card. And then the Snow Drafter doesn't end up getting it because it becomes a little too easy to play it. Worst Cure, Best the Sea God for a little cheaper. Cure, Best the Sea God is like borderline good enough for constructed. So if you're playing a deck that cares about snow cards, that's the context you should be thinking about this, right? Like, you're already doing the snow thing. Also, you don't have to wait. You don't have to wait for your 8/8. You're just, like, spending your 6 mana on 6, playing your 8/8. Cure Best of Sea Gods is also unfucking beatable and limited. So you should be a lot more excited if it is just worse Cure Best of Sea Gods. And that should be something that excites you, not the opposite. How many Snow Drafters could Modern Horizons support? Usually like 2. Yeah, not everybody will be able to play Snow for sure. But it seems like some colors are like more focused on Snow than others. And multiple people can draft the color and like one of them can be Snow and the other one's not. Anyway, we're moving on. I've already shared my thoughts. Inga Roonies, 3 blue, 3/3, legendary creature, human wizard. Enters the battlefield, scry 3. When it dies, draw 3 cards if 3 or more creatures died this turn. So this is pretty clearly a a limited card, right? The ability, the draw 3 ability is a little situational for constructed. Drawing 3 is pretty zesty though. Drawing 3 is pretty good. Play this into a sweeper. Your wizard tribal deck. That said, so like I think this is costed for limited, and I think the abilities are priced for limited and such. I do think it's a very good limited card. Like 4 mana for a 3/3 that scries 3 is already fine for limited. And it's not actually that hard to get the ability to work. Because just trading it in combat is already 2 things dying this turn. So if you set up a trade with a Roonies and have a removal spell for a 3rd creature, or the opponent just can't attack with multiple creatures, they can't offer multiple trades, or you get to cash in, draw 3, and stabilize. Yeah, even if you don't crack this to draw 3, I think it's powerful enough to force the opponent to play different, which means that the ability is still relevant, even if you don't get to actually cash it in. Play with Woe Strider. Oh, baby. Right, Ninja Jeff. Yeah, the floor on this card is that you have a 4 mana 3/3 that scries 3, and your opponent's attacks are really awkward. And that's a pretty high floor. Yeah. Yeah, so I don't think this is an embarrassing first pick at all in draft. You're not taking this over like a rare mythic bomb, but taking over most removal spells and other creatures, I think. Carfal, Arbinger, 1 and a blue for a 1/3 creature zombie wizard. Taps out of blue, spend this mana only to cast a foretell card. Only to foretell a card from your hand or to cast an instant or sorcery spell. This art is fascinating. Coming down the stairs like that. Usually you don't see zombies so composed and in power. It's sweet. Is this card good in limited format? 2 mana 1/3s are usually a little bit better than they look. Just like stat-wise, they do a good job of gumming up the old board. Yeah, obviously I wouldn't really consider this for constructed, even in a dedicated foretell deck. I still don't think it's good enough for constructed play. In limited, it seems fine though. Totally fine. Not super exciting, but it doesn't need to be. Solid little role player. The Jarrah Kinseeker is 3 and a blue for a creature shapeshifter, changeling. This card's every creature type. When the Jarrah enters the battlefield, if you control 3 or more creatures that share a creature type, put a 1/1 counter on the Jarrah and then scry 1. Yeah, the fact that it's a shapeshifter means that you only need 2. You only need 2 creatures that share a creature type for this to trigger. And then the trigger's pretty good. It means you get a 4 mana 3/5 that scries 1 when it comes into play. This is totally solid. And then if you're playing this card, then you also probably care about tribal synergies, so it's like one more card that works well with your other tribal synergies. Yeah, this card's solid. Mists of Lajara, 1 in the blue, enchantment flash, enchant creature or vehicle. Enchanted creature gets -3/-0. Did y'all see that Adam Ruins Everything got to spoil this? Adam Conover. I think that was one of the pretty recent ones. Like within the last couple of days. Yes, I'm gonna dig the tweet here. I don't know if any of y'all actually saw Adam Conover. But he said, "Can't believe Wizards Magic let me reveal the most overpowered card in the new set, Kaldheim. This is going to dominate the meta! Rip to your vehicles!" Anyway. I thought his show was good. He took some, like, very complicated topics and did a pretty good job of distilling them down into, like, digestible chunks. it wasn't. I didn't learn enough. I didn't learn more from watching his show than I would from like reading an article. But it was so digestible that it was just like entertaining at the same time, like easy to put on. Almost like Bill Nye-ish in that regard. Anyway, enough about Item Con over. Yeah, this is obviously not gonna destroy the metagame. It's obviously not gonna ruin everything. Is this fine? Yeah, I mean, Flash adds a lot. It is also cool that this can go on a vehicle. I mentioned this earlier on other situational removal spells, but the more aggressive your deck is, the worse than this card gets. Because it does not take a blocker out of the equation. But the less you care about attacking, especially attacking on the ground, right? The less you care about attacking, then the better this card gets. Because then you're taking out an attacker, or blowing out an opposing pump spell or something. And then you don't really care about the body that's left behind. And the flash aspect can help you win combat, so it's not like a strictly worse pacifism. You don't think it's better than Blue Vendetta? No, but I'm happier about playing multiple mists if I'm in a deck that wants to play mists. I'm happier about playing multiples than I am about playing the Blue Vendetta. I think you're right. One reason I'm talking about the positives of mists, whereas I was talking about the negatives of the Vendetta, is because I think people are like gonna weight mists more towards unplayable and the Blue Vendetta more towards being like super good, you know? And so I want to like take people back down to reality with the Ulcerator, the Vendetta, or whatever, and I want to like point out the situations where mists can be good enough. Anyway, Mistwalker, 2 in a blue, creature shapeshifter, changeling, flying. 1 in a blue, Mistwalker gets +1/-1 until end of turn. Well, that's not terrible. So just having a 3-mana 1/4 flyer is already solid and limited. And then you also add on the ability that it attacks better than the average 1/4 with the wonky pump ability. And the fact that it's like every creature type, so the creature type matters cards. Really want to play with this card. This card's good. Not embarrassing to take very early on, especially out of a weaker pack. I like it. Mystic Reflection, 1 in a blue instant. Choose target non-legendary creature. Next time one or more creatures or planeswalkers enter the battlefield this turn, they enter as copies of the chosen creature, and you can foretell. Yeah, 2 mana this might be hard, but 1 blue. 1 blue seems doable. This card, so I don't think it's good enough for Eternal play, for Eternal formats. But this card seems like it would be really fun to pop off with like Monastery Mentor. So you target your Monastery Mentor. The first trigger would resolve it. You just have a normal 1/1. But then if you're playing like 0 mana artifacts or whatever, you're just like spitting out more Monastery Mentors. Fun with Avenger of Zendikar, yeah. Master Waves, right, yes, stuff like that. Only works 1 time? Oh, fair enough, fair enough. Yeah, it's not until end of turn. It's the next time. 1 or more creatures. Yeah, good call. So it's not actually that exciting with Mentor. I mean, having a second Mentor is always good, but that's more like a clone. It does say 1 or more creatures, so you're right. Maybe Avenger and Master of Waves, cards where like a bunch of creatures are coming into play at the same time, is better. Good call. That's why I like doing these set reviews. It's really easy when you just like read through everything to make a simple mistake like that when you misread one word for another. I always learn something when I do these. Battlesphere, Siege Gang, yeah, all those. Jace Mirror Mage. You can use it to hose an opponent's creature. That's true, that's a little versatile. Yeah, it's the next time one or more creatures or planeswalkers enter the battlefield this turn. They enter as copies of the chosen creature. So you can target like your 0-1 goat or something. When your opponent's sick planeswalker, this comes into play as some trash card. You can target their creature on into the battlefield to copy. Yeah, I mean you can target their creature. Like say you want to clone their best creature, you can certainly do that. It's versatile. It's certainly versatile. It has to be, you know, for this style of effect to be interesting. The more narrow you make it, it's like almost an insult, right? Because it's so hard to pull off. The card's fun. The card's really fun, yeah. This card, I think, is also very fun. Orvar the Allfarm. 3 and a blue, legendary creature shapeshifter, changeling. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, if it targets one or more of the permanents you control, create a token that's a copy of one of those permanents. When a spell or an ability an opponent controls causes you to discard this card, create a token that's a copy of target permanent. So, for me, I guess I'm glad that it's instant or sorcery. Because then otherwise auras become good. Also, where it says, like, if it targets... I'm glad that it's a cast trigger. I guess. So, like, replicate doesn't work with it. You don't get to do anything too silly. And I'm glad that it's instant or sorcery, so that you're not, like, putting an aura on one of your lands and then just, like, getting another land. That seems like it could get silly. On the other hand, you're spending 4 mana on a 3/3 changeling. Maybe you could allow it to be silly in some situations. Fun in EDH. Yeah, reading this card, I just want to, like, pyroblast my own lands. I just want to do, like, weird niche things. The art is fun. The art's super fun. The art's super cool. And, like, mysterious. The art, like, sparks your imagination. And the card sparks your imagination, so that, like, it's very in harmony with itself there. This card reminds you of Zada. Yeah, that's a good comparison. There's gotta be some really cool combos with this card. You want to target Swift Spear with Gut Shot and Mutagenic Growth? Yeah. Yeah. Or the new 2 mana 1/1, huh? The new Sprite. That one works too. You think Orvar seems busted? I think it's costed such that it's not busted. I think the cheaper you make this card, the more dangerous it gets. But at 4 mana as a 3/3, it's hard to call this busted, unless you're talking about EDH or something. I think the card's sweet, and it's like interesting / powerful enough to be worth considering. But I would be extremely surprised if it like became meta, right? You think the last ability is busted? How often are your opponents, like, making you blind discard? It's like just Liliana, right? And that card doesn't see a ton of play anymore. It's in certain EDH groups, it's probably insane, right? Cruxa? Yeah, I suppose Cruxa sees some play. Does it see standard play? I haven't played a lot of standard lately. There's like the one modern deck that plays Cruxa. Just Modern Jund. Plays a couple. And then that one historic deck. The red-black flashback deck plays it. If you make a copy of Cruxa with it, you have to sack it. Yeah. Cruxa has to be unearthed, right? Yeah, I wasn't aware of red-black sacrifice playing a ton of Cruxa, but sure if you're Berger. You right. I was just thinking about the Young Pyromancer deck. That deck's really Cruxa based. Anyway, Pilfering Hawk. 1 in a blue snow creature bird. Flying and then snow activate to draw a card and discard a card. This card's good. In the average deck, this card's gonna be better. It's also sweet, right? Sweet Hawk stealing your shit. Fucking magnificent. I like that sick-ass tree in the background, too. Makes the whole card seem more mystical, even though it's just like a 1/2 Hawk. The setting itself is evoking the lore, evoking the fantastical. The flavor text, yeah. Pretty good. Kind of crushes the uncommon snow guy. Sort of. The ceiling on Frost Auger is higher. Frost Auger is pretty garbage if you only have like a fourth of your deck be snow, I think. If you're only drawing like 1 card in 4 or less, you know, if 1 card in 5 is snow, this activated ability is just not very good. But if half of your deck is snow stuff, half or more, then Frost Auger's activated ability starts getting a lot better than Pilfering Hawks. So the ceiling's higher, but the average deck is gonna want this. The average deck, even if like you only have a few snowlands and you're not activating it, like a flyer is still a flyer. So yeah, solid card, solid, right? And then of course if you're snow, you're just super happy to have another snow thing. Raven Form, 2 in a blue sorcery. Exile target artifact or creature. Its controller creates a 1/1 blue bird creature token with flying. Oh, something, I'm sorry, I'm gonna come back here. Something about drafting Pilfering Hawk versus the uncommon. This is the one that you want to wheel, because it's only good in snow decks. Whereas Pilfering Hawks is going to fit into more decks. So you're going to take Pilfering Hawk higher, and you're going to try and wheel this one. And just like only have it in the decks where it's going to actually produce. And then Pilfering Hawk can fit into more shells. Anyway. Raven Form, 2 in a blue sorcery, exile target artifact or creature. Its controller gets a 1/1 blue bird. And then foretell for a blue. Yeah. It's fine, right? Yeah, I suppose the ability to hit artifacts makes it a little bit better than Frogify or whatever. You're giving them a flyer, though. You're giving them a... like kind of a real creature, not like some 0/1 or 1/1 changeling. It's also sorcery versus instant. The one where you give them 1/1 changeling an instant was probably better than this card. Foretell bridges part of the gap. Being able to hit artifacts in an equipment set bridges part of the gap too. You don't know if you generally main deck it? Yeah. Right. It's not like the worst card ever to main deck. Turning the opponent's best thing into a 1/1 bird is fine, especially if you have a lot of flyers in your deck. But I'm with you. It's not. I don't think it makes the main deck all the time, and it starts to get awkward in multiples. Good and constructed. Well, we're not mostly talking about constructed. If we're talking about a common or uncommon for constructed, I'll usually specify. Usually we're talking about commons and uncommons for limited play. And when we're talking about like mythics, we're talking about like whether it's interesting in constructed and like what formats it's interesting in is how I do my set reviews. But yeah, you'd have to have like a very specific meta before Raven Form was interesting for constructed. You'd have to be like caring about Vertel and like, I don't know. You'd have to be like mono blue and need an answer the Great Henge or something. Or like Batterskull stuff. You'd have to be like a Batterskull stand-in. Hard removal for blue? I don't consider it hard removal if it gives your opponent value. You know what I mean? Alright. Reflections of the Jarrah. 4 and blue enchantment. As it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Whenever you cast a spell of the chosen type, copy that spell. Copy of his permanent spell becomes a token. Does this work with giant spells? Sometimes the creature type spells muck me up. Like, does this copy Tarfires? Doesn't work with Stomp? Yeah, I wouldn't expect it to work with Stomp. But does work with Tarfire. Okay. Double all his dust. I really like the art on this card. It's an interesting take on doubles. If I was told, like, here's what the card does, write an art description for the artist to make, I don't think I would get this end result very often. It's sweet though. These cool looking mass frogs on top. Yeah, a little creepy, right? A little creepy. Good shit. You do not get 2 turns if you cast an Emrakul now, because that's a cast trigger. Yeah. So this is a nice EDH playable. There's some sealed decks that are gonna want this, but it's a little slow for draft. Most draft formats / decks. There's obviously going to be exceptions. The format could be slower. The tribal's more tribally than I would assume. 5 mana is a lot. 5 mana is a lot to just do nothing though. Run ashore, 4 blue, instant. Choose one or both. The owner of target non-land permanent puts it on top of or bottom of their library. Return target non-land permanent to their owner's hand. This isn't bad. Maybe even actively good. Obviously not a constructed card. It reminds me, I think the first time we saw like a double bounce like this was the landfall bounce 2. Was that the first one? I guess there was Unwind, right? I think it was called Unwind, the 1 blue, where you would bounce something and then they had to pay 1, or you would bounce another. That's pretty old. Who chooses top versus bottom? The controller does. Totally Lost is fine in draft / sealed. I think it's a fine one. Totally Lost is sort of fine. Totally Lost is the sort of card that I'll play if I have to. I think Run Ashore might be closer to that. Getting 2 things is good though. Withdraw is what I was thinking of. Anyway. Card's fine, but fillerish. Rune of Flight, 1 in a blue enchantment or a rune, enchant permanent. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card. As long as enchanted permanent is a creature, it has flying. As long as enchanted permanent is an equipment, it has equipped creature as flying. This is a good one. This is a really good one. Kind of cartouche-y. If you ever, obviously not as good as the blue cartouche, because that one gave +1/+1 in flying. And drew a card. But blue cartouche was pretty nutty. Pretty nutty for what it was. If you use this on an equipment, then that's pretty strong too. That's like the one way it could be better. Saw it coming. 1 blue, counter target spell, foretell for 1 in a blue. Yeah, a lot of people were talking about this one, the newest cancel. This cancel culture! Ah! Yeah, no, this card seems good to me. The more foretell cards you're playing, the harder it is for people to play around it. But it's not like playing with a bunch of foretell cards makes it harder for people to play around than like just having all the cards in your hand too. Maybe it's less obvious. Like if you have a full grip and you're playing blue Drago versus having a few of them in play, I don't know. It's more about being able to split up the costs. It's more about like actually using the mana if you have nothing else to do with your mana on your turn, and then doing more on a future turn. Discard resistant, yeah, I don't know how much discard is actually happening these days, but yeah. The card that allows foretelling on the opponent's turn. I think it makes it cost 1 less too, right? Yeah, that card obviously plays well with this one. The Flash Horse. Anyway, yeah, I think we all think this card is at least like fine to good and gonna see play. Strategic Planning is a reprint. Man, Randy Vargas and Donato back to back here. 2 of my favorite Magic artists. Pretty sweet. Not a whole lot to add to Strategic Planning. There's some graveyard synergies in the format, but I don't think there's a ton. We haven't even gotten to black yet, so maybe there's more that I'm giving it credit for. But that's the format where Strategic Planning starts to become like much better than an Impulse Effect that puts them on the bottom of your library. But it's a good card to have in Standard. It's like a solid card for your limited deck. Never gonna be bad, right? Hey Jingleberg, thanks for the sub, thanks for the 33 months. And then Undersea Invader is a 6 mana 5/6 with Flash and just battlefield tapped. Huh. Weird. This art is super fucking cool. Very atmospheric. Underwater like that. I guess six mana for a 5/6 flash common would be too good for limited, I guess is the idea. Blue just having a 5/6 for 6 mana is already a good rate for limited. But you can't block with it the turn you play it. And you're not like doing the nutter butter flash thing where you're actually like eating their creature. This just lets you hold up stuff on the opponent's turn, like surprise them with your attack, I guess. Certainly going to see plenty of limited play, but not nutty. Alright, we have made it to the black section. Let's see, it's 10:30. I feel like this review is going slower than they usually go. I might have to go a little late. Although the gold and colorless section is a little bit shorter than it was for a few recent sets, so that'll help out a little bit. But yeah, at almost 2 hours per color, and that would lead to like a 10-hour stream. Anyway, I'm gonna refill my water. Grab another soda. When I come back, we'll get into the black.